This is the beginning of an interview with Philip James Duffy at his daughter's home, 4660 Club Circle in Atlanta, Georgia, 30319. Mr. Duffy was born on October 21st, 1921. My name is Betsy Block and I'll be the interviewer. Mr. Duffy, could you state for the recording what was your branch of service that you served in?
I was in the Navy Air Corps from 1942 to 1945.
And what was your rank?
Ended up as a full lieutenant.
And where did you serve?
Served in South America, Africa, and England.
Okay. And so did you enlist?
Yes, I did.
And why did you enlist?
You know, I had two brothers that were already in the service, and so I completed the picture.
And why did you choose the Navy?
Because it's the best service to be in.
What were your brothers in?
One was in the tank car, and one was in the Air Force.
And when you enlisted, how did you feel about that?
About what?
Enlisting, were you nervous?
Oh, no, I was anxious to go. I think everybody was in 1942.
Mm-hmm. And where were you living at that time?
In Chicago.
Mm-hmm. And how did your family and friends feel about you leaving?
Well, everybody was sort of wanted to be in uniform during that time, and so it wasn't uncommon to see all your friends in service.
Mm-hmm. And you knew the woman who would be your wife later when you enlisted?
We went to grammar school together.
Right. So how did she feel about you enlisting?
Well, she was, I don't know, you'd have to ask her.
Okay. How did you prepare to leave? Did you do anything before you left, or?
No, not just, but I had to wait to be called up. You signed up, and as soon as they had an opening for you, they would send you a notice to report someplace.
Mm-hmm. And where did you report?
Well, I had to report in Chicago, but we boarded a train, and we ended up with some 40 cadets. And out of that 40 cadets, incidentally, only 8 of us got our wings. The rest of them washed out. So that somewhere down the line, they would wash out.
Did you go with any friends, or?
No, you made friends as you joined up.
Mm-hmm. Did you make friends immediately?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
right. You had a lot in common.
Mm-hmm.
And those troop trains really is what they were.
Mm-hmm. And what about your training experiences?
Well, the troop train took you to Spokane, Washington, even though they promised that I would be going to Glenview, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
They sent me 2,200 miles out to Spokane, Washington, and we had some preliminary training at the airfield there, plus ground school at Gonzaga University. And we actually soloed in the Luscombe aircraft, which is a single-engine plane, and we stayed there, and then were transferred down. Once we completed our training there, we were sent down to St. Mary's College in where is it? San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really phys ed training.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do any flying there. We just did a lot of marching and phys ed work. And then after through there, we were moved up to Pasco, Washington, and got into the Stearman aircraft, which were biplanes. And we trained there for 3 months, and then were sent down to Corpus Christi, Texas, which was the closest I got back to my hometown. in all my service time. And at Corpus, we would branch out into a particular field that you wanted to be in. And I chose twin engine, and we went and flew Beechcraft twin engines at Corpus, and had instrument training there also, and graduated from Corpus. And that was, from there we went to operational training in Jacksonville, Florida, where I flew seaplanes for 3 months. And had a crew of men, and it was interesting because heretofore we had never landed in water, so we were traveling on water, or rather we were flying in the Jacksonville River, and that was interesting to have the experience of landing and taking off on water. And from there, they moved us up to Chincoteague, Virginia, where we were assembled with our crews and would end up with 7 enlisted men and 3 officers, all in Chincoteague, Virginia, and we would train there for a while until we left for South America.
And do you remember any of your instructors during this time?
Oh yes.
Were they tough?
Well, I flew with a fellow named A.J. Force. He was A.J., I was P.J., and we had another friend we used to pal around with was T.J. So we would always say, hey, P.J., where's A.J.? And he said, I don't know, T.J. And we drive everybody crazy. But we would fly patrols, anti-sub patrols from South America to Ascension Island, then from Ascension Island over to Rabat, and from Rabat up to southwest England. And we spent the remainder of the European theater war in a town called Pottery, next to Tunxwell, England. And when the war ended there, our squadron was shipped back on a seaplane tender with 2 other squadrons, and we all reported back to Norfolk, where we awaited orders for the next trip. The next trip came after 45 days leave, and we were shipped out to California, Alameda, and we're shaking down in PB-4Y2, single-tail liberators. And from there, we trained till the Japanese gave up, and we had enough points to get home.
And so what specifically was your position in the plane?
Well, as a pilot, we would alternate flying or navigating, or the 3 of us. Our patrols, incidentally, were 12, 13-hour patrols, so you had to provide a lot of relief to, and we flew at 500 feet and 12 hours, 13, 14-hour patrols, looking for submarines which one never gave, one which gave up on VE Day, and we would circle that sub till a destroyer escort took over the crew.
And were there ever any casualties in your unit at all?
Any what?
Casualties?
No.
Okay, that's good. So can you name a couple of your most memorable experiences while maybe you were on leave or with your friends?
No, I can't.
Not okay.
No, thank you.
But when you did come in contact with the enemy, when you were circling those submarines, did you feel prepared when you were there?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
right. Actually, I think it's funny when you fly. You're not seeing your victims die like some of the other pilots and fellows in the infantry would. So it doesn't seem to impress you too much.
Mm-hmm. It's more impersonal, do you think?
Yeah.
Out of all the places you went to, which was your favorite, do you think? Like, you served in England and South America. So.
Southwest England was probably the quaintest,
Mm-hmm.
more familiar.
What did you do while you were on leave? Did you?
That's again.
Once again.
Once again. We actually, there was a lot of V-bombs in London, and you could always tell an American because he would be up on the rooftops watching them V-bombs while the Englishmen were down in their tunnels. But it was the tail end of the V-bombs when we would go into London. We did have a patrol, incidentally, that visited. We didn't visit because we would fly over that way on the looking at the the destruction of the coast of Caen and Saint Lo, where the start of taking over Europe began. You'd look down and some of those French towns, you wouldn't think you would have a piece of rock that was 12 inches big. They just were obliterated down to powder. But we survived anyway.
Mm-hmm. Did you stay in touch with family and friends when you were overseas?
Yes, you occasionally would get together with other fellows, but there wasn't much else we could do.
Did you ever write back and forth?
Oh, we keep in touch with, but you know, not too many of them because they were from all over. I mean, the enlisted men, of course, were from all over.
Mm-hmm.
But AJ was from Chicago, so we hit it off immediately. And in fact, ironically, he had got married and he lived a block and a half from my folks' home.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a lot of AJ after the war.
Mm-hmm. But did your family write you while you were overseas?
Oh yes,
well?
oh yes.
Mm-hmm.
I had a system though. I would use carbon paper and I'd write my letters. And I'd write a general letter of what I was doing, and then personal paragraphs would go to the various people.
That's great. That's smart.
But it saved a lot of duplicating writing, really.
Mm-hmm. What was the food like? Was it
Food, Navy food is always good,
Oh.
especially, I think they don't teach them anything but how to make pies. Because their pies are great.
Mm.
Did you always have plenty of supplies?
Yes.
as well?
Yeah.
Mhm. Did you feel any pressure or stress at all?
Well, we take care of that with a little scotch. Did you ever see any entertainers who came? No, the USO avoided us, I think. We were, never really got to see any entertainers.
Did you ever pull any pranks or anything like that?
Oh, yes, of course. None that we can repeat, though.
None of them can go on tape. So, what did you think of your fellow soldiers?
In the Navy,
Mm-hmm.
you're the best.
Yeah. That's cool. Did you keep a diary?
No.
No.
Pictures, but no diary.
Mm-hmm. Do you recall the day your service ended?
My service ended.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was very interesting. My wife was with me, of course, and we were out in California. Crow's Landing was the air base that we were stationed at. The fellow, I came home from flight training, and Janet says, "Have you heard about the one bomb that killed 80,000 people?" And I looked at her and I thought, since we had trouble in this motel with ant problems, I figured the ants had gotten to her. Because we were on a base flying, training, and we didn't hear a thing about the atom bomb being dropped. So it was hard for me to believe this till I turned the radio on and we heard all the commotion about the hydrogen, the bomb. So I finally realized it was true, and that was signaled, of course, the end of our getting out and getting home.
Okay, so
Okay,
Well,
marriage took place 45 days on our 45-day leave. And what we would do, there were about 6 of us waiting orders from the Navy as to what our next billet would be. And so what we did, we drew straws, and one of the 6 had to stay there and get all the orders and send them on to us in Chicago. And we got an extra 5 days out of it that way. But my dad, we decided to get a picture taken on our wedding day, or during our wedding rest. And so we had our picture taken, and the photographer, for some reason or other, put it in the window, store window of his establishment, and my dad saw it. And this was after we had left town, and so he got this picture for us and saved it for us.
Good picture.
But that's how the picture came about, and it turned out pretty good.
It is. It's a great picture. You want me to put it back up on the, so you don't have to hold it
Okay.
anymore?
So, we're talking about when the war ended, and so what did you do in the days and weeks afterwards?
After the
After,
war?
After your service ended, I guess, after you heard about the
I
atom bomb.
went back to work for the company, Lindbergh Engineering, that I worked for, and I worked for them until they decided to open up an office in the southeast, and I came down and opened up the office for them.
And were you back in Chicago for that?
I was in Chicago,
Mhm.
yes, and then came down here to Atlanta.
And did you go to college before the war?
I went piecemeal to Northwestern, up in Chicago for a while, and a number of other little colleges.
And did you join the Veterans Association?
No, I didn't.
So how do you think the military experience influenced your career? Do you think it helped at all? Or?
Well, it teaches you to obey your superiors, but actually, I should mention while I'm at it that my wife and I have been married for 53 years,
Wow.
45 to
Yeah.
45 is 55, 59,
Yeah.
59 years.
That's
Happily.
great. That's wonderful.
And do you think it influenced the way you felt about war at all?
No, I think the personnel during World War II were pretty much 100% towards the war, and it was easy for you to be a part of it because everybody else was. So it was well worth the trip, especially since I wasn't in the infantry.
Did your wife volunteer during the war? Was she a volunteer?
No, she was an airline stewardess during the war. But when we got married, of course, she had to give that up.
Did you keep in touch with anyone for long after the war? Like any of your friends from?
Yes, well, like I said, AJ
Right.
was
In Chicago.
probably the one that I spent the most time with. AJ Force, F-O-R-S-S.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that you would like to add? Any stories you would like to tell, or anything you would just like to say?
No, I don't think so, really. I think I've covered 59 years pretty fast.
Would you show the Navy wings to the camera?
Oh, yes. This is what it's all about, and this is the elite force. And I used to tell everybody that the Navy Air Corps is a small outfit, basically.
And this